Hello and welcome to another Morning with Marla. We're on episode 2 of the podcast, and today I have one of my good friends, Jacqueline. She is an intimacy coach and self-love coach and just kind of embodiment of all things sexual and pleasurable, and I'm so excited to be here talking with her. Jacqueline, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit so we can get to know you a little bit more?
Yeah, thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be on this podcast with you. We have been basically talking every single day through voice messages, and I think it's really exciting to capture the magic of what happens when you and I go back and forth. So I feel grateful to be here. So I have been working in the sexuality realm for about 2.5 years now. Before that, it was much more about the self-love, overcoming like an eating disorder, being able to learn how to be inside of my body. There was pieces of me, my soul, my heart that wanted to escape and be outside. And so I was constantly numbing and doing all these different things to basically be out of my body. And so for the past 5 years, it's been this learning, this gentle learning of how to be with myself, how to feel really connected to the earth and connected to my physical form, and finding peace within that, finding joy within that, learning how to cultivate the pleasure within it. So it's been a journey, and it's been very much a journey for my own transformation, and now I am offering that work to others, coming from a space of realizing that I can go from suicidal to fully like sexual, sensual radiance, and not even just in a sexual or sensual experience, but just within my like day-to-day experience, being able to feel that like radiant glow that I am so grateful to be alive, even in my deepest moments of pain, which still of course come.
It's always work to be done. And it's just, I mean, I focus a lot on like confidence and stepping into your confidence. And I feel like this plays so well together, and we kind of like banter back and forth so well together because we're coming from almost the same trying to get to the same place, just from like a little bit of different angles. And it's just really amazing, being in such a depressive state as well, the transformation that can happen when you just find your alignment and your purpose. And it's been so amazing kind of just watching you over the past couple of months just like embody it even deeper and flourish even more. And like one of our conversations that we were in recently was just kind of about like de-armouring and like cervix kind of trauma, or like trauma that you're holding in your sexual space in like your little womb like sacred center, and it's something I really wanted to dive in on the podcast about because A, I had never heard of it before. B, I'm just like, okay, this makes so much sense, and I'll definitely let you describe it. But like the thing that really stuck with me was the analogy you made between like a knot in your back, and like how when you have tension and you're holding it in your shoulders, and the way you can like kind of push and release that, which makes you feel so much more open and like in less pain and carrying less trauma, and how that same thing can happen in your womb space and from all these different things that occur in your life. And then you made this beautiful post about it, and you're working on sex toys around it, and I know you're working on a program around it, and I'm just like, give me more. So I just wanted to dive right in on here and just like learn as much as possible and get the information out there, because I feel like a lot of women have no idea what this means or what even would occur in this process.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for just sharing all of that piece. And it is, I really do like that analogy too of the knot in the back. So I'll go into a little bit more about the way that, the way I've been trained about how the body works, and how specifically our sexual center, our yoni. Can I use the other word that I use? Or okay, our pussy. I just wanted to make sure.
We're gonna use the word pussy.
I am definitely a pussy queen. That is what I call it. And I want to just say this real quick too. The reason why I call it the pussy is because a vagina is just not correct. A vagina is actually just the vaginal canal. So the space that like has like the big opening that's inside of you. The vulva is the outside. And then there isn't really a word to describe like the whole package. And so that's why I like to use the term pussy, because pussy includes not only the vaginal canal or the vulva, but also the clitoris and the mons. And the mons is going to be the place where your pubic hair grows. And so it's more of like a full encompassing energetic space. And so I want to start off with that, because I know sometimes the word pussy can be a little bit triggering, but we're using it because we want to include the entire aspect of our body that is our sexual center. I also even include like a womb in pussy, because it is your whole sexual center. So yeah, so the way that the body works is and specifically around trauma. And so first, redefining the word trauma. Some people think of trauma as only something that's like absolutely horrible that happens to you, maybe like sexual assault or, seeing somebody die or something crazy and big like that. But the truth is that the real definition of trauma is anything that affects you on a psychological level. And so you can have a little trauma from, let's say, your partner looking at you in lingerie and saying, oh, that lingerie doesn't look good on you. Or, maybe your mom when you're young saying, oh, that art isn't very great. And so you have that experience where you have a piece of trauma that gets stored inside of the body, because when your parent says that, when your partner says that, you have a feeling of, let's say, shame or embarrassment. A feeling of sadness, a feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough, or this is not good enough. And so that emotional experience, which happens inside of the limbic system is the part of our brain that processes all of the emotional shit, as well as we have different lymph nodes that are throughout our body, specifically like underneath or in our neck, like underneath our head. There's a bunch of lymph nodes that are inside of our breasts. And then there's different ones just located throughout the body. And this is the limbic system. And within this system, those emotional traumas get stored inside of the body. And the way that they get stored is in kind of like a little knot, similar to a knot inside of the back. And so you can press into different pressure points all throughout the body to be able to release these past traumas, these past memories that are now blocking us from having the kind of life that we want. And the way that they block us is that, so you have that experience. It's painful. Your mom says, I don't like your art. Your partner says, I don't like the way that you look inside of this lingerie. So you have this painful experience. And then what happens is your body puts over a protective mechanism that blocks you from being able to have that kind of experience again. And so basically it says and usually that protective mechanism will show up as fear. Like, oh, I have fear of putting on lingerie, so I'm not going to put on lingerie because I don't want to have the experience of having somebody say that the lingerie doesn't look good. And so now I've built up this protective mechanism that acts as fear that says, no, I just don't put on lingerie anymore. And so now we are blocked from the experience that we most want to do. Or maybe, like I said, for the art example, I'm just not going to do art anymore. I'm not an artist. Oh, I'm not good at that. So I'm just not going to do it because I don't want to have to experience the shame of someone saying it doesn't look good or I don't look good. And so when it comes to now, like our pleasure, when it comes to our sensuality or our body or our sexuality, like instead of being able to move through these experiences, we now have these blockages, and these blockages are stored as physical pieces inside of our body. And so in the yoni and in the pussy space specifically, we store so many little traumas. Almost anything that has to do with our physical body because a lot of our physical body pain is shame, and shame gets stored inside of our sexual sensual centers. So this is for both men and women, but it tends to get stored in our lower area, in our pelvic area. And I'm not exactly sure why. That's something that's still like that's being studied to figure out like why it gets stored in these areas specifically. But so the process of de-armouring is it starts to go in and release these little aspects of these little traumas. And so we massage first the outside of the vaginal, or of the vulva actually, as well as the vaginal canal. We massage around the inner and outer labia, right around the clitoris, because there's all these different pressure points that tend to store this tension. And then we go into the vaginal canal as well. And with the vaginal canal, and this is part of, like you said, my partner is a glass blower. His name is Womxn, and he owns a store called High Tide here in Santa Barbara. And what we're doing inside of this is we're making these sex toys that are curved to specifically be able to hit those pressure points inside of the vaginal canal. And what you do is as you're pressing into the points, we do some deep breathing together. We use the different tools that we use are focus, sound, pressure, movement. And so as you're breathing into these spaces, I might ask you to sound out what the sensation is. And the literal sound of the vibration, and I know, Marla, you know a lot about this because you know the power of sound and the healing that can come from it. But as you release the sound outside of your body, or potentially even like a physical shake as you're pressing into these points, you are literally allowing that stress cycle, that trauma that wasn't able to fully express itself, to release.
To me, it's just like acupuncture for your pussy.
Exactly. No, literally, that is exactly what it is. And I realized that another way of being able to talk about it too, that I haven't spoke to yet, is that so when you have that traumatic experience, when you have, for the two examples we're using, your partner say that you don't look good in that lingerie, typically what happens is we don't express the feeling that we have in that exact moment. And this is actually a really key point to why we end up storing the trauma, is because rather than being like, oh my God, that's like the worst thing ever, like, that feels so crappy in my body, or like, wah, and like crying it out, letting the shame pass through us, we tend to store it. We tend to be like, oh God, okay, well, that's bad. I'm gonna like hold this in now. And that is how the trauma gets stored. So to be clear, every time somebody says something to us, or if we have like a big emotion, it's not going to necessarily be stored as trauma if we allow it to express, if we give it the time and space to express, because emotions are energy in motion. And so if you don't let that energy move and move through you, that's when it gets stored. And so what we call that is a stress cycle that wasn't able to complete. And if you think of like animals in the wild, when they have a stressful moment, when they get scared, if they hear a noise that, you know, like there's a jaguar behind them or something like that, they will make a noise, they will shake, they will run, they will do something to express this emotion. And that is how they're able to not have this stored trauma. It's because of us, our human conditioning, where we're like, oh, it's not appropriate for me to scream right now. It's not appropriate for me to just break down crying and to feel the shame of like our partner not loving the way we look in what we thought was sexy lingerie. Like, and so my other part that I'd like to just say within this too is like, if you have an emotional experience, even if you can't express it in the moment, like take time that day. Go, like, you know, it may not be appropriate for you to start wailing and crying when your boss shames you, but like if you can go home and then get really angry and hit pillows and scream and cry and let that emotion move, then you're not going to store it as a trauma experience inside of your body.
Which I feel like literally creates all physical ailments is like your back hurts or your legs hurt or your hips hurt or your stomach hurts or you have a headache, or usually, and not always, but usually you can bring it right back to some sort of traumatic experience that you might not necessarily, and we talk about this all the time too, is like, let's not relive the traumas. Let's not put ourselves back there. Like, oh, like some therapists want to do this sort of therapy where you're literally reliving these traumatic experiences, which we agree doesn't really serve you necessarily in a positive way, because like, why go back to the past and have to relive this shit, you know? So it's like, if you can just, you don't necessarily have to pinpoint what the trauma was, but if you're feeling an emotion, and this is something I've been practicing a lot more too, is just, I sit on my yoga mat in the morning, and if I feel like tears bubbling up, I'm just like, all right, let's breathe and let's cry this morning. I'm gonna sit here and cry for like 30 minutes and just like let it out, and just like feeling safe in your own space and like cultivating a space for yourself where you can move through the emotions. But literally the other morning I was crying for 30 minutes, and then like 4 hours later I was like, wow, I feel so much better. Like, you're not revisiting that moment over and over and over again, because you're literally, and it sucks to sit in it and it's uncomfortable, and you can feel it kind of moving up and through like your heart space, and just releasing in your own emotional way, whether it be like yelling or like or you know, or crying or whatever it is. But it's just such a profound experience to be able to sit in your emotion, feel it fully, and allow it to just move through and pass you. It's just such a way to let it go.
Yeah. And how much lighter did you feel after that morning cry?
Oh, so much. I mean, it's night and day, you know, it's crazy.
And I'm curious, as the tears started to come up, like, did you know like why you were crying in that moment?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I did in that moment, but sometimes, but it's not every moment where I do, and I couldn't exactly pinpoint like exactly why, but I kind of knew where it was stemming from.
Yeah.
But there's moments where I'm just like, I'm really weepy today, and that's great. I'm just gonna cry at everything. That's the moment in the cycle like I'm in, you know, is where I'm in my moon cycle, which is something really cool to pay attention to too, and maybe a whole nother subject. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's crazy.
I think that it's really cool. Like, one of the things that you said that I really resonated with is that you're making the time and the space to allow your body to have whatever emotional experience it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're sitting on your mat and you're like, okay, how do I feel? What needs to come out and release right now? And, you know, for that specific session, as you said, you knew why you were crying, but you might sit one morning and be like, I don't even know why I feel sad. There's nothing that happened like yesterday or this week that like necessarily would make this. But to me, what it is that it's your body saying like, I feel safe and grounded enough. I feel that I have the nervous system capacity to let this piece of my trauma, my stored emotional experience out. And so right now in this moment, I do feel weepy and I am going to cry, and I'm going to allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why oftentimes in massages, in acupuncture, in a lot of these like different kind of healing modalities, you may have like a lot of different emotions arise as you're doing it. And it's literally because you are releasing these emotional experiences. I remember my mom, man, she used to weep every time she'd get a massage, and I'd be like, Mom, are you okay? Like, what's happening? And now coming to realize, like, she was literally physically releasing those stress cycles that had been stored inside of her body. And she had to be able to have you know, you can go into the mental to be able to try and release them, or you can do it with the physical body. And as you were talking about earlier, like what you and I have really agreed upon is that oftentimes there's more likely that you're going to potentially re-traumatize yourself. And re-traumatizing basically means that you relive the experience. So you're grinding in those neuronal pathways of the trauma to say, yep, this is what it is. And you're like re-carving in even more, like taking that path over and over again, saying like, yep, I'm experiencing this trauma. And then you feel it. Your physical body body goes through the whole traumatic experience again, because your mind doesn't really know the difference between a visualization and what is actually happening in real life. So when you think about your past traumatic experiences and you actually physically feel it in your body, that is you re-traumatizing your body, unless you're allowing it to express and move in a different way. And so when you do it, so for example, with the de-armouring process, when you're massaging into these different points, you may have flashes of memories that come up. You may have experiences start to arise because you're pressing into the tension and those pressure points of where those past experiences are stored. You also may not. Oftentimes you don't. And oftentimes the only part that may come up is the emotional experience. So you may cry, or you may feel shame, or you may feel embarrassment, or you may feel a little bit of guilt. And that's why it's really nice too to have somebody like me guide you through the experience, because then you're held in this really safe container of love and of like, I'm going to be here with you. And so you know that you're safe to go through it. I'm going to pull you back out. I'm not going to let you go back into the trauma experience. I'm not going to let you re-traumatize yourself.
Yeah.
Also, there are some people who have been doing some healing work who can definitely hold themselves through the experience and doing it on their own. And so, like, not to say that you have to work with somebody. If this interests you, I will share a couple different resources at the end of this talk. So that way we can, like, you can start to play around, and also to always message me. I love to talk about these subjects. So definitely here for that.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I mean, and it's so, when those emotions do come up, it's such a natural thing for the human brain to try and attach it to something. Like, this emotion is coming up because of this, but it doesn't have to be, like, it doesn't always have to attach to anything. Like, some days I'm just like, I'm really angry and aggravated and annoyed, and like, I don't know where it's coming from or why this emotion is bubbling up. And I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to go sit and breathe, because I don't want to talk to anyone right now. I don't know what I'm going to say. Like, it's just, when you become emotionally aware of what's going on within yourself, I think it's like, that's definitely like one of the first steps, is just like having emotional awareness, and then being able to sit in those emotions, as uncomfortable as they are, and move through them. And one thing I did want to bring up is like something that's been coming up, like you talked about your mom and crying through massages, is I feel like, as, what are we, millennials? Is that our generation?
I think so. Or maybe we're Gen X. I don't know. Gen Y?
Somewhere in the realm of that. But like, what are we again? But I feel like our parents just didn't, because I was thinking about it this morning before this podcast. I was like, our parents didn't have the resources, especially in women. No one was talking about sex. No one was talking about trauma. It was literally like a time when you had to hold all of this in, and you couldn't say and communicate about how you were feeling, or dive deeper into your sexuality, or figure out what feels good and communicate that with your partner. And it's just like, it's been such a blessing growing up in this atmosphere of just like awareness and openness. And that's why I'm just like, yeah, say pussy, like, let's go for it, you know what I mean? And it's just like, some people might be like, oh my god, they said pussy, but like, we're here, we're talking openly about all of this. And that's the beauty in it, is like the suppression that happened before is kind of like, we're not allowing that to happen anymore. And it's also an awareness, if you are like, 55 plus, or not really, haven't heard of any of this stuff before, it's just like, dive in, because your sexuality is such a huge part of your being and your life. And it's just like, sexuality in your own body, sexuality to the world around you, sexuality with nature, like dropping the fear of dancing and singing and playing, and all of this stuff just brings so much more goodness into your life. And it feels so good shedding that like shunned taboo layer around it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing about sexuality for me is, there's a lot of different modes of healing. There's like, there's the meditation way. There's the like eating really healthy and exercising and like really focusing on that aspect kind of way. There's what are some of the other ways? Like, there's like the intelligence way of like learning about so many different concepts and ideas and things, and so that you can start to heal an understanding of the world. And sexuality is just one of those like many modalities of how you can come into it. But the thing that I find about sexuality, and of course it's not for everyone to study right away, and I say that only because sometimes I really work with like the window of tolerance of your nervous system. And sometimes your nervous system window of tolerance is so small that like even like approaching your sexuality is like really challenging and like really brings up so much shame. And so there's like some emotional healing that needs to be done even before you enter into this like sexual realm. But when you enter into the sexual realm, it touches on so many different parts of your life. It touches on desire. And when you think of desire, at first you think like, oh, like I desire a person or like a partner or this kind of thing. But not only that kind of desire, it touches on, are you in touch with what you want in the world? Like, you know, like desire in the sense of like goals, desire in the sense of like, I want to create this. I want to have this. I want to have that sort of aspect. And if you don't have like a really healthy relationship with your sexuality, your desire may be affected either in the fact that you have way too much like drive, desire, like I need this thing, or on the opposite end of I don't even have that much desire inside of me because I don't let myself feel desire. And that was something that I had for many, many years in my life. And so healing my sexuality helped me then be like, you know what, I do want this thing and I am going to work towards this and I do deserve this. Sexuality also touches on your throat. And what I mean by that is like your ability to speak your truth, your ability to share your boundaries and your needs. Because the thing is that sexuality is one of the main places where you do have to set boundaries and needs, like really strongly. And it's one of the main places that nobody does, that nobody really talks about because they're afraid of either shaming or harming the other person that they're with, or afraid that they're either too much or not enough themselves. And so, you know, if I ask for my needs, then that means that I'm too much, or that like I'm asking for too much, or I'm taking too long, or blah, 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 blah. And then the boundary part of like, oh, if I set a boundary with my partner saying like, I actually don't feel like having sex tonight, then maybe they won't love me anymore. Maybe they will, you know, want to be with somebody else who has more desire than I do. And the needs are also entwined with the desires as well. So see how like it's hitting a lot of different places. So when you're able to speak your needs and your boundaries for your body, and your body is the main place that this comes from, you know, your sexuality is so dealing with your body, then you feel able to speak your boundaries and your needs in your work, in your friendships, in your relationships with your parents or your family members. And so it starts to really work on all of these different pieces of your actual relationships. Your sexuality and your sensuality is so entwined with the way that you feel about your body. With the amount of love that you carry for your body. If you feel shame inside of your sexuality, you will feel shame in your body. If you feel shame inside of your sensuality or being like a sensual person, if you're like afraid to show yourself, it usually is stemmed from somewhere inside of your sexuality. And then of course your emotional self. If you are in a space of not being able to hold yourself emotionally, like if you don't let yourself express your pain, if you don't let yourself express your anger or your sadness, if you're like really emotionally shut down, what it does is that it shuts you down from feeling in general. And so what I mean by that is like, let's say you only let yourself feel sadness and anger at like a level 4. And like, that's it. In like 1 through 10, you only let yourself feel it at a level 4. And that every now and then it just like explodes into a level 10 because, you know, you're capping it and all of a sudden it goes, rah! But that like, you only really let it feel a level 4. You're also only letting yourself feel pleasure at about a level 4. Because the pendulum swings back and forth. And so the amount of feeling that you can feel pain is the amount of feeling that you can feel pleasure. And so when you look at sexuality in all of these different ways, when you work on your sexuality, you work on your capacity to feel pleasure, which means you're also working on your capacity to feel pain. which means that you're also working on your capacity to hold your emotional self in general. You're working on your throat and your ability to speak, your boundaries and your needs in your life. You're working on all of the different, like, basically categories that I just shared. And so that's why I think that sexuality is such a beautiful way of choosing to heal, because it heals so many different parts of the whole complete self. It's not just working on like your sex. And I think that's really important to note.
Yeah, no, I feel like it definitely, it's like the little flower blossoming from the inside, you know, right in your womb space. And like, for me, it's also such a point of intuition and following and being able to drop down into your gut and ask a question, like when you have a pivotal life question. Because if you think about it, life is all of these questions, and you can take this path or this path or this path. And if you look down the line and think of all the paths that you ignored and didn't go down, it's like your whole life could be completely different. And when you're coming to that crossroads and you're just like, I just don't know what to do, and then you can tap into that space and kind of come to this place of like intuitive knowledge and just like what feels the best in your body. I think that's what opening up sensuality can do for you as well, is like just really being able to tap in and understand. And it's funny to me because when I do make very intuitive decisions, I'm like, I don't know until after I've made the decision. Usually I'm just like, that was totally based on intuition. Or like in a different, like I choose something and then it goes, like time goes forward and I'm like, oh shit, I should have listened to my intuition there. And you slowly start to be able to tap into that, and it just really helps you stay in alignment and on that path of like what feels the best for you, and to stop saying yes to everyone and everything, and just really like ask yourself like what feels best within me, and be able to tap into that intuitively. So it's literally like the roots of it all. And
Absolutely.
even if you travel back to like Adam and Eve, that's like, you know, the roots of everything and every story. And it's just such a beautiful thing to tap into. And it just is such a, I think, uncomfortable subject for some people.
Yeah.
Do you have any like recommendations if you are just like stepping into the sexuality realm just like a little bit, what could make it like easier and more comfortable for people to kind of like start exploring?
Yeah, of course. I'd love to share that. And I just wanted to point out too, you know, like basically what you said within like the intuition, and I totally agree with that, because when you work with your sexuality, basically what you're doing is you're learning how to listen to your body. And listening to your body and its wisdom is the way that you tune into your intuition. Your intuition isn't a mind thing. Your intuition is in your body. And that's why they say like, listen to your gut, or some people talk about it like as like a little spark of flame that they feel maybe in their solar plexus, like, you know, right above the gut. Some people talk about it as like listening to their pussy, or being guided by their pussy or their womb space. Mama Regina Thomasauer has a book called Pussy, and she talks about the GPS, which is the great pussy in the sky, which is,
that book is just, I'm just like, yes, everyone needs to read this ever. All the males need to read it too. Like, just go read this book or listen to it on Audible. It's freaking phenomenal.
Absolutely. And within that, you know, plug or like to answer your question, I think that is a great place to start. I would say, because the thing is that you need to understand in a way the like kind of concepts of like how do I say this better? You need to decondition yourself of what sex and sexuality is. We have been programmed with so much bullshit, from our porn culture, to the way that women's bodies are objectified, to the way that men's bodies are objectified, and like what the standards are of what a sexual man is and what a sexual woman is. So the first step is to start to take in information and knowledge that is going to help you start to redefine all of this. Because you, wherever you are in your life, have been like shown a completely different version. And the version of it is from a capitalistic, patriarchal society that wants you to be cut off from your body. Don't feel yourself. Cut off your emotions, work 9 to 5, and then party all weekend with drugs because you shouldn't have to feel anything. Drink every single night. Take this pill. Take this like thing. Like, it's basically shut yourself off from your body, because if you tune into your body, then you're going to actually want to change things.
Or it's like,
and you're going to want to live a different life.
It's like douching and Summer's Eve products and
oh my god,
it just is endless. And like, yeah, it's just all controlled by like this patriarchal.
And on that note, I just want to throw out, do not douche. If we're going to talk about it, douching is bad for you. Do not put any kind of product up your pussy. Your pussy is a self-cleaning product. If you're going to put things up there, like, have it be like a suppository that is extremely healthy with absolutely no chemicals. You can pronounce every single thing. Like, you can put garlic up your pussy. You can put like natural things up there, but do not put a soap product up there. Douching is not good. It's going to ruin the pH balance. If you've been doing it already, you'll probably have a healing timeline where it's going to have to like slowly get back to balance. But I just I have to throw it out there because like it's a crazy product that is just not good for your body in the end.
And it's such a sensitive space.
Yes.
It's this little beautiful chamber that is just like the sensitive little flower that is your like pussy area that you have the boundaries to set around most of the time. Like, obviously there's traumas that happen, but it's just like, treat it as if it was like the sacred vessel. You know, like, it's just have so much love and compassion for it. And I think that's what when we first started talking, that's kind of what we worked on a little bit. And like, I know I've had womb trauma, just from like, I think I can share the story of I got HPV when I was 18, even after I had all of the HPV shots. So like, they're not 100% effective. And I don't know if I had it before that or what happened. And I had a male doctor and had to get a cervical biopsy. And I'm not saying all male doctors are bad when they're going up there, but I just don't think they have like the same senses that we have and know how it feels. And he was just so rough and like not patient. And I was 18 by myself on this table, and he went up there and he's like, it's not going to hurt because your cervix has no nerve endings or whatever. And then I had to like take this piece of skin off my cervix, and then he left it in the freaking petri dish next to my face. So as I was getting dressed, I see a little piece of skin floating in this water, and like, it was just, I literally got ill afterwards because I don't want to see part of my inside sitting next to me that you just ripped out of me, and I'm feeling like invaded. And it's something I've carried with me for a really long time. And that's why I was so excited to get into this subject, is because I'm just like, all right, like what things am I storing down there, like within my pussy, that like do need a de-armouring and do need to be released, like that back muscle. And it's just such a cool subject to me, that there is something available that can help you work through these things.
Well, and I really appreciate you sharing that story. First of all, I'm sorry that happened to you. And it is wild to me how many people, including myself, have had similar experiences. And well, like you said, not all male doctors are like that. And if you do have a male gynecologist that you really love and that you feel safe with, then like, amazing, great. I would say that like, when I thought mine was okay. And when I switched to finally working with a woman, I was like, I can't believe that I haven't been doing this whole time. Women just know. They understand what you're going through so much more. I had my male doctor many times share with me that what I was experiencing wasn't possible when I was talking about like things that were going on about my pussy. And it was just like, how can you tell me it's not possible? I'm telling you I have this pain. Like, you know, like I'm not like, you just, what? Like, you can't tell me that what I'm experiencing doesn't exist. But so within that, I really appreciate you bringing it up, because some of the things, I'd love to like list off a couple of the different ways that our pussy specifically can start to store the trauma that de-armoring really helps with. And one of the main ways is if in a gynecologist's office you don't feel safe. And so during that time, the pussy will often like kind of tense or get scared and literally like kind of clamp down and have this moment of being like, oh, I don't feel safe. The body might even like have a little bit of a like of a pulling in. Maybe your like shoulders start to close in. I realize that I'm making physical actions and not describing them out loud. So, you know, like if you don't feel safe inside of a gynecologist's office, that is one way that you may store some pressure or store some tension. Another way is if you have had sex during a time where either you don't want to or you're not turned on enough, where your pussy isn't open enough, because there's a difference between, you could be fully turned on, but your pussy could not be like fully ready and open. Maybe you're not wet enough. So there's a lot of different ways in which most of us have bypassed our body by letting somebody inside of our vaginal canal without being ready or without being fully relaxed, fully safe. And to be clear within that too, we all have sexual breaks and we have sexual accelerators. And so for some of us, we might be pressing the brakes and the accelerators at the same time. So like we are turned on, and at the same time, there's some part of us that doesn't want to be in a sexual experience and we're confused. And so like, there's oftentimes like, I talk to a lot of women about that kind of like confusing message of your body. And I just want to like bring presence to it so that anybody who's listening knows that that's a typical experience. And it's something that we talk about a lot in my sessions. But coming back to the de-armoring, so letting anybody inside of you or penetrate you. Also, having a masturbation session where we go too quick inside of ourselves. And, you know, if you're using your own fingers or a wand to go inside of you, you can store little bits of trauma if you're like, well, I just want to heal, so I'm gonna like go up there no matter what. And like, like your pussy has to be ready. You have like, I wait for a yes from my pussy before I stick anything in her. I like make sure that I massage the outside of the vaginal canal a bunch of times to kind of like get her into a space where like, hey, like, do you feel ready and open for this? And I will feel at this point an energetic yes, or sometimes literally it feels like my pussy just like kind of like opens up a little bit. I'm like, all right, she was really but so being aware of that. Other things, of course, are like sexual assault, any kind of experience where you were touched, or even if you're not touched, but you are like, have a really creepy experience with a man where you get scared and you feel like there's the potential for a sexual assault, that can store trauma inside of the pussy. Because it's basically any time that your pussy will start to tense up and kind of close down and be like, ooh, I don't want it. I don't want this. Like, this is scary. And so those are different examples of times that your pussy might store some of this trauma, as well as, like I said, just any kind of like emotional experience. If you don't speak your boundaries, even like in like, let's say a business meeting or something, that could store a piece of trauma inside of your pussy, because it deals with the sexual center of like keeping yourself safe. So if you're not keeping yourself safe, you lose the trust inside of your body and the trust inside of your pussy. And so that's where de-armoring can start to help. De-armoring is also really great for building sensation inside of your body. So oftentimes for our vaginal canal specifically, we've had this like very consistent up-down penetration, or like, you know, in-out penetration, where it's like shoop, 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 shoop. And there's not a lot of sensation. I know you like that noise. Where there's not a lot of sensation that is focused on any particular area of the pussy. And so the way that I like to think of the vaginal canal is that there's like 3 different parts. There's the vaginal opening, and then you move up and there's like the middle part, and like it's kind of like a circle. And then you move up, and then that's the very top part that hits the cervix. And so within the de-armouring, we press into the 4 different directions of each of those 3 parts. And we kind of like massage in, and we find anywhere that has tension. We also find the places that have numbness. Oftentimes, our body stores trauma as numbness. So if you're allowing somebody to penetrate you before you're ready, your pussy's literally gonna like kill off the nerve endings because because it's like, I don't want to feel the pain anymore. So instead of feeling pain every single time, I'm just going to let these nerve endings die. De-armouring helps to resensitize and re-stimulate those nerve endings so that you start to feel more sensation inside of your vaginal canal, which opens you up for more pleasure, which opens you up for the potential of actually having vaginal orgasms as well, because you're resensitizing this area. And so for me, I do this work all the time, but I'm noticing I'm not having very many vaginal orgasms recently. And I haven't been doing de-armouring for about a year because I went through like a 3-month phase where I was doing it weekly and like a couple times a week and really getting into it because I wanted to like clear out a lot of it. And right now I'm noticing that I haven't been sensitizing these areas of my pussy. I haven't been using a yoni egg. I haven't been, I've been having just like penetrative sex. I haven't really even been using a wand inside of me that often. And therefore, I'm starting to notice that like the sensation isn't as much. Also, I've been going through a lot of deep traumatic healing in the sense of like the ways that I've been working. And so I think I'm finding a new layer of this trauma that I'm now able to work with. And so I'm developing again, I'm a de-armouring practice where I'm doing it about 3 to 5 times per week. And I'm probably going to do that for at least a month and maybe a little bit longer. So that way I can once again, like resensitize all of my areas and start to have more vaginal orgasms again.
Could you explain the difference between like vaginal orgasm and like a clitoral orgasm?
Course. So a clitoral orgasm is going to happen mostly on the outside of the vulva where your clitoris is. So your clitoris is like kind of like that little bean or that like the little piece that sticks out. Sometimes it's actually pretty large, so I don't want to say always little, but it sticks out from the outside, and it's the most sensitive place on a woman's body. It has 8,000 nerve endings. And so that is the very tip of the clitoris. Then the clitoris actually is mostly an internal structure. And so that's the tip that's on the outside. And then it comes in and it kind of comes up and then it breaks off into like 2 legs. I highly suggest if you're listening to this and you're not driving, Google a picture of the clitoris. It's insane. It blows my mind the first time I saw it because it's huge. It's not just that tiny little nerve ending, but it is, that's like where you mostly access it. But so the legs wrap around the vaginal canal. And so when you're stimulating the inside of the vaginal canal, you are stimulating the internal part of the clitoris. And that is what helps to give you a vaginal orgasm. And so it's internal. Vaginal orgasms tend to feel more like a wave, more like a softer wave. While a clitoral orgasm tends to feel like a really big buildup, like kind of like a mountain, like you're climbing up a mountain, like, ooh, pleasure, 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 extreme intense pleasure, and then all of a sudden, woo, okay, down, 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 and then you like relax and you're like, oof. A vaginal orgasm will tend to be more like a wave, and so it kind of like waves in and out. It tends to be a little bit slower. It doesn't usually carry that same intensity as a clitoral orgasm, but it can if you start to sensitize it more and more. I'd say like, even for me, I'm not to the point where my vaginal orgasms are as intense as a clitoral orgasm, but they're getting there. And I've been working on this for a while. So just to like, be frank about it too, sexual healing is a lifelong thing. It takes a long time. Or not it takes a long time, but like there's endless amounts of stuff that you can learn. There's like endless amounts of pleasure. My capacity for pleasure will grow literally until the day I die. So, you know, to focus on that. And then there's also, just to be clear, there's the G-spot orgasm. And the G-spot is the place that's on the like internal front wall. So like, how do I say this? Like where your pubic hair is, like if you were to make a come hither motion and then like towards where your pubic hair is, you're going to feel a little bit of a ribbed area, almost like the roof of your mouth is the way that people describe it. And yeah, and that is where your G-spot is. And so there's also G-spot orgasms that you can have. And that's also the place where if you squirt, it means that you're having a G-spot stimulated orgasm. So G-spot orgasms are kind of a little bit of a mixture of both the clitoral and the vaginal. Sometimes they can be way more like a wave and not necessarily feel like a big climax and like, Sometimes they can feel a lot more like that clitoral stimulation where all of a sudden it's a really big release. Different women, it usually differs, and it's not typically that like one woman will go back and forth between both, but usually one woman has either more of a wave or they have more of like an intense experience, but you can train your body to have both. So if they are working with it, then they can.
And it's just,
sorry, go ahead.
So interesting because I feel like this is another, like, I feel like something that people don't A, talk about, and B, like, I just remember being younger and being like, okay, so clitoral stimulation is what gives me most of my orgasms for sure. And like, and I've had a man in bed ask me not to stimulate myself clitorally.
Whoa.
And I'm just like,
my pleasure.
And so for me, it's like, I think women feel bad around that area, or like they cannot orgasm without helping themselves out, which is what I thought for a really long time. But to hear that it's like all of those combinations of different spots within your pussy that are all pleasurable and can all trigger an orgasm within a different way and work together in a different ways is really beautiful to hear. And like, I think a lot of women need to hear that, is because like there's not just one way to reach an orgasm, and not every woman is going to be cookie cutter the same way. And that's why the communication around it and the self-exploration and you know, it's such a powerful thing, because you learn how to ask for what you want, you learn where it is what you want. And like for these women that are not reaching orgasms at all or haven't in their entire life, it's like there's not just one option, and it's not just penis in vagina back and forth. There's so many different things that can go on, and to kind of round it out a little bit, or like wrap it up a little bit, I feel like the male would much rather have you be in a space of pleasure, or I mean your partner in general, you know, not necessarily female male, but I think they'd rather know what you want and be able to communicate in that way and be able to make you feel good. And I think by having the self-awareness around it, it just makes the bedroom that much more fun and exciting, and it doesn't lose its luster, and there's continual exploring and like explosive orgasms for all, and it's just the orgasm is this female superpower, literally. And it's just so, there's so much around it that's good for mental health, depression. In Pussy, she goes over how it's really great if you're having really bad cramps or horrible like period symptoms, or anxiety and clearing your head and preparing for a meeting. And it's a thing that everyone should experience and explore, I think, multiple times a week, if not multiple times a day, you know. And it's being able to explore within there and de-armor all of that space and really create even more pleasure within your life, not necessarily within sex itself, but just in general, just like that general turn on to life and everything around you. It shifts your world, especially if you're dealing with mental health issues or depression. When you can walk outside and just like the air, the beauty, the flowers, the moon, the sun, the everything around you. Like, I'm getting full body goosebumps because it just like, I love getting giddy over the tiniest little things. And that is your pleasure center as well. It doesn't just have to be around sex.
Absolutely. And that's the really beautiful part about when you start to work with your sexuality, and your relationship to pleasure specifically, you do start to have those experiences like you were just speaking of, where a flower becomes so much more tantalizing, where like a bite of food is like absolutely delectable, and almost like I've had joygasms now. Like, I mean, if we're going to talk about, like, there are many, many other kinds of orgasms that you can have that I didn't even mention yet. Maybe we should do another podcast on that.
We definitely will.
And I'll talk about how to stimulate all the different ones. But, you know, your capacity to be with your body and to be with your pleasure is the capacity that you have to be able to be with the world. And so when you really work on increasing this aspect, then you are able to be with the world in such a more beautiful way and interact in a way where there's more love and joy and pleasure within it. And I really appreciate that you bring that up, and how orgasms can help you like almost like get to that place. Because when you know the possibility of how much pleasure you can feel inside of your body, through like really big orgasms, through like really incredible pleasure experiences, then you start to hit a threshold where you're not ready to ask for anything less. And you're like, I don't want to like live a life where I'm like having these incredible orgasms and then I'm going to a job that I hate. Like, you know, like the orgasm can even like motivate you to get to a place where like, I need to shift my life so that I feel more pleasure throughout it because I deserve this. And just like to be, come back real quick to just like the pleasure and the specific orgasms that we were speaking about. If you're desiring to have an orgasm and you've never had one before, the easiest one to start with is the clitoris. And so I would just say, like, that's a place to start. That was a question that you asked me earlier of like, where do I start? The clitoral orgasm is going to be the one that's going to be the most attainable. So I would start there and do it without shame, and do it without, oh, like, well, this isn't my partner pleasuring me, because that's something that women come to me all the time. Like, I feel like I have to have an orgasm by just my partner pleasuring me. And it's like, yeah, but you're putting so much pressure on you. And the way to learn how to have a vaginal orgasm is often that you stimulate both at the same time. You sensitize the internal vaginal canal, and so by sensitizing it, it makes it so that it's a possibility for more pleasure. But once again, when you're having that penetrative sex, you are literally stimulating the inside of the clitoris. So if you stimulate the outside of the clitoris and you're stimulating the inside, then you can have like that combined like wave and intense pleasure orgasm. And so start first with the clitoris. Every single woman can orgasm. Every single woman, of course. And I do say that with just the slightest caveat of like, I understand that there are some like able or like disabilities in the sense of like actual physical like things that have unfortunately like cut you off from that experience. And so there is the possibility of that. But if you haven't had like a super traumatic accident where like potentially you don't feel your legs anymore, or you know, something like that, you can orgasm. It doesn't matter how old you are and how long it's been since you haven't had one. Like, you can, and I can help you get there, and so many other sex coaches can help you get there. So please like find somebody to work with, because you deserve that pleasure.
Yeah, and like you said in the beginning, we're so open to DMs, and I mean, I'm not like the pro. We got her right here, you know, on over Zoom. Jacqueline would be the one to reach out about that, but I could always direct you in that direction too.
Or we can have a group message about all the things.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we're coming up on an hour-ish.
Oh,
I think. I've kind of forgot to look at the time when we started, but I think we're around there. I was going to offer a little meditation, but what I do want to offer instead is come to our new moon dojos. I do a meditation in those to open them. Jacqueline does a little like either breath work or sensuality practice at the end. We do them every new moon. We just had our new moon Leo dojo. Last Tuesday, which was amazing. And yeah, all those links are on my Instagram, which is Marmo, Marmo. And then you can find me on Facebook, Marla Mockus. We'll be doing a lot more of these. Jacqueline will be on here a lot more. If you have any like questions or topics or anything you want to discuss or hear about, we're open to talking about anything pretty much under the sun. I mean, it's podcast too, and we're already talking about orgasms and de-armouring the cervix and the pussy. So we're going to go deep on here. And Jacqueline, do you want to kind of say how people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, of course. That would be beautiful. The first thing that I wanted to also mention is that our next new moon ceremony is going to be either like the 15th, 16th, or 17th of September. We'll have an exact date, but just so you can start to mark that in your calendars, it'll most likely be the night of the 16th, Wednesday. And it'll be the new moon in Virgo, which is an exciting new moon to work with. And then to reach me specifically, my Instagram is going to be the place where you'll get the most information. I post stories pretty much daily. I'm posting every week, either about my own personal experiences of sex, sexuality, sensuality, body love. Also, I post a lot of plants. I like plants.
We love plants.
So, any kind of plant information too, you can definitely get, but that's a great place to start to, as I said, decondition yourself from what you believe sex and sexuality are. And that's going to be at Pleasure Initiatrix. So at PLEASUREINITIATRIX. And like Marla said, she'll have that link in her bio or in the show notes. And then also I have a website that's www.pleasureinitiatrix.com. And I do have a Facebook. My name is Jacqueline Nora on it. I am not that great at accepting friend requests, only because I get like 60 a day. So it typically takes me a really long time to get to it. I kind of sit down for like an hour or two and just like go through like 300 to 400 every now and then. So
60 a day?
I know it's kind of crazy right now. It's insane.
Wow.
But, I know. I don't know what to do about it. I'm like, follow me on Instagram, guys. It's way easier. You get way more information there. I promise. But yeah, so that if you don't have Instagram and you still do want to at least be in contact with me, Jacqueline Nora is a great place to find me. And upcoming too is my partner and I, as I shared, he's a glass blower. So we have just developed new sex toy wands. And so they are going to be all different shapes and sizes, depending on what you're looking for. But if you are interested in this de-armouring practice, then I would suggest reaching out to me through a DM at the moment. The wands will probably be up on my website in the next month or so. So depending on when you're listening to this, I'm talking about September 2020 is when it should be up. And if not, you can always message me. And then in the next couple months too, I will be releasing a little mini course that for purchase about de-armouring specifically. So if you don't want to actually have a session with me, but you'd like to at least like know more about the practice, that is a way to work with me. And the other part too that I'd like to throw out there is that if you want to research this a little bit more, another name for this de-armouring practice is also called yoni mapping. And so that's another thing that you can type into Google and start to just kind of get a basic idea of what it looks like. But I find that it's really nice to be guided by somebody, only because, like I said, it helps hold that safe container, and you can ask questions. And if it starts to feel tension or pain and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, to have somebody there who does know and who can help guide you into it in a really beautiful space, I think is really nice, especially for the first session. So.
Yeah.
And then also I do one-on-one coaching. That's the main thing. I work with women primarily. I also work with couples. With couples, I don't do like relationship coaching. I'm not going to sit and talk about your problems with you, but what I do is I guide couples through basically date nights that help them, help you build a foundation of intimacy and intimate practices. And all of the practices are based off of tantric and Taoist tradition. So they're like breath work and eye gazing and a couple communication exercises. all the way into pussy massage and penis massage and into like learning how to have a full body orgasm too. So there's a lot of different stuff that we can talk about. And with women, I work on anything sex, sexuality, sensuality, learning how to embody your feminine, learning how to heal your divine masculine, learning how to love your body kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm a big fan of just like all of it.
And all the things. You got to do all the things. You're like, if you want that, I got you. And I've done her legendary lover date night. Is that still on your website for sale?
It is. Yeah, it is for sale. And actually, I'll be hosting another one in probably September. So if you want to come live, you can join the live one. If you want to just purchase it on my website, you can do that as well.
Yeah, the legendary lover date night I did with my partner a couple months ago, beginning of quarantine maybe, and he's kind of like, he's just dipping his toe into this realm a little bit, you know. It's really sweet. He's starting to use the lingo a little around me, which makes me really happy. But it's something that the conversation piece in there is something I tell to my clients all the time. I don't want to give too much away, but it's just like really good communication. Like one person's asking, yes, yeah, or like, what are you afraid of? But not being able to fully respond, or not like allowing yourself space for 24 hours to not respond between the conversation. And I just think it was so freaking powerful. I was like, what? This is amazing. But yeah, we're so happy to have you guys. We'll definitely be on again soon. And again, if you have any questions, I also do confidence coaching. So kind of helping women to get them more turn on with life, feel more confident and communicative in relationships, and just kind of step into their power and their alignment and their purpose. And I've been off my path and lost my purpose before, and it was one of the darkest years of my life. And I just want to help other women kind of get through all of that. So we will tag team you over here again someday. And thank you so much, Jacqueline. I'm so happy to have you on. It was so amazing, and I'm so grateful for you. And yeah, we will talk super soon and do another one of these.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marla. And I just shameless plug for you too. Marla has been almost like a daily fixture inside of my life for the past like 4 months, and I have maybe longer, like 6 months now. And I have grown so much, like, and it purely, I believe, because of the reflection of what you give. You hold and see me in my highest, and also acknowledge when I'm in my lower spaces, and like in this way that gives me more permission and more love for myself. And I feel more confident. I feel like I'm stepping more into myself and into my body. And I just like wanted to speak to your medicine too, because my thriving and the way that I feel now, I believe, is so much a part of just like having this connection with you. And so working with Marla is fucking incredible. So do it.
Right back at you. We connected a long time ago in Santa Barbara, and then reconnected over kind of quarantine time, maybe a little bit before. And it's just been like nonstop, like, ooh, the voice memos back and forth. But yeah, so it's really lovely to be here.
Yeah.
But yay, we will talk soon, and love you all. Another morning with Marla complete. Like, subscribe, do all the things, and I'll put all of the links in the bio or like the description for this podcast. Yay.
Okay.